Hello and welcome, dear viewers. This is Cases. Hundreds of thousands of children in various countries are used as soldiers in armed conflicts around the world. Many children are abducted and beaten into submission. Others join military groups to escape poverty, to defend their communities, or out of a feeling of revenge. Since the 1970s, a number of international conventions have come into effect that try to limit the participation of children in armed conflicts. Nevertheless, the Coalition to Stop the Use of Child Soldiers reports that the use of children in military forces and the active participation of children in armed conflicts is widespread. Human Rights Watch and several other organizations submitted an example of such recruitment conducted by the foreign-backed Free Syrian Army in Syria, who is now forcing minors to join them in the battle against the Syrian government. Meanwhile, the Center for Documentation of Violation in Syria has documented the death of at least 17 children who fought with the FSA. Joining us here in the studio is Mr. Wadih Al-Asmar, the Secretary General of Lebanese Center for Human Rights, and joining us Kevork, Almassian, a political analyst, to speak more about the issue. Hello and welcome to our program, gentlemen. Before starting our conversation, we will take a report that would summarize today's topic and be right back.
Historically, hundreds of thousands of children under the age of 18 have been affected by armed conflict. They are recruited into government and non-government forces, and they are often abducted from schools, on the streets, or at home. Others are supposedly recruited voluntarily. Their motivation lies in the social, economic, and political issues affecting their lives. Some international conventions identify children as any person under the age of 15 and urge states to take all feasible measures to ensure that they do not take a direct part in hostilities. However, in 2007, Paris Principles on the Involvement of Children in Armed Conflict resolved the issue and defined child soldier as a child associated with an armed force or armed group refers to any person below 18 years of age who is or who has been recruited or used by an armed force or armed group in any capacity, including but not limited to children, boys and girls, used as fighters, cooks, porters, spies, or for sexual purposes. In addition to this, under Article 8 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, recruiting children is considered a war crime. The child in these instances has to be protected until he reaches the age of 18. What is written in the law, however, is challenged by the existence of an estimated 250 child soldiers worldwide engaged in 33 current conflicts and who are often younger than 15 years old. In a recent report by the Human Rights Watch, groups of Syrian boys as young as 14, hail from impoverished communities and are largely illiterate, are being asked to carry out dangerous tasks in the current ongoing war. The New York-based group added, children as young as 14 have served in at least 3 opposition brigades, transporting weapons and supplies and acting as lookouts. And children as young as 16 have carried arms and taken combat roles against government forces. The Syria Violations Documenting Center, a Syrian opposition monitoring group, has also documented the deaths of at least 17 children who fought with the Free Syrian Army. Many others have been severely injured and some permanently disabled. Human Rights Watch has called upon nations funding the opposition groups and providing them with weapons to urge the FSA to stop recruiting individuals under 18 years of age in any military purpose, whether as combatants on the battleground or in supporting roles. According to Amnesty International, such children are robbed of their childhood and exposed to terrible dangers, including psychological and physical suffering. They are placed in combat situations, used as spies, messengers, porters, servants, or to lay or clear landmines. Girls in particular are at risk of rape and sexual abuse.
Okay, what actually caught our attention is the child that is actually smoking, and these are pictures that came from the FSA opposition inside Syria. Of course, you will get to that, but at the beginning, Mr. Wadih, as the head of the Lebanese Center for Human Rights, can you tell us more about the files that you have in your organization towards the child recruitment? In general, what's the information that you have? Are there certain statistics or even additional details that you can share with us?
I think when we are talking about child recruitment and child soldier, this issue is not a new issue. It started even before. During the introduction, you was talking about the 70s, but mainly the International Convention of Geneva in 1848 already states that. Not in a very strong way, but it was made strongest in the 70s with the second convention of Geneva, saying that children under 15, and they not only they should not be participating, but they should be protected. So it means government and opposition group, but mainly should take care about them and take all the needed action to protect them. On the other hand, people or young people between 15 and 18, they should not be enrolled by force. They can be voluntarily participating not in the military action but in the support. Even this distinction after the Convention on the Rights of Children by the United Nations in 89, I guess, and the optional protocol, we have a specific protocol on children and on children recruitment, and we have another convention on protection of women, children, and elder during armed period conflict. All this framework of humanitarian and human rights law, and even the criminal laws, the ICC status voted at Roma, what we call Roma status, state in the Article 8 that the use of children in an armed conflict can be considered. It's considered as a war crime. So it's we have a complete framework against this crime. It's a war crime.
Mr. Wadih, according to the information that you have in the organization, what are the ages of these children being recruited? Does it vary between what ages does it vary specifically?
If we talk this worldwide, if we go in the last 10-20 years, the main country where this was used were in Africa. During the internal and the inter-country conflict. We found kids from 5-6 years used to on transportation or on some logistic stuff till 15, 14, 15, 10, 12 participating in the actively participating in the conflict. Our organizations we are monitoring as you know, we are working on Lebanon. As the Lebanese Center for Human Rights, we are working on Lebanon. We are collaborating with other NGOs working worldwide or around the region. In Lebanon, we didn't really notice. In Lebanon, I think we have another kind of problem. It's not the recruitment. It's the kind of propaganda directed for the children in several ways, where you take someone when
they take advantage of them?
We take advantage of them because someone at 5, 6, 7, when you start teaching him from the beginning some idea, some very close idea, you end up at the age of 14, 15, and after not brainwashing him, but it's not fair for the person. I'm not talking about the child. On the regional level, we don't have stats. Today it's very difficult to catch a statistic on child recruitment in the region because it's very difficult to define, to separate what is voluntary and involuntary. That doesn't mean that involuntary is authorized. Voluntary is authorized for under 15 and even after 18 for us as human rights activists. It should not be authorized. Okay,
of course. Now we will be speaking about details about this point that you highlighted. But here talking to Kevork Almassian, a political analyst that's joining us from Beirut. Kevork, actually the question goes as in, what motivates these armed groups to choose particularly these children to recruit them?
First of all, we have to know that the so-called Free Syrian Army are either forcing these kids to participate in the war with the Syrian army, or these kids are going as volunteers to also fight with them. But in both cases, it's a war crime. It is, and this implicates on them to have a laws. The international law says that they should go to the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court. But in the case of the Free Syrian Army, the problem is they are not organized and they don't have a centralized leadership. And when you don't have a centralized leadership, who will be responsible for this acts? When you have a state, for example, the Syrian army, if they used kids, you have generals, you have leadership, you know how to persecute them. But in the case of the Free Syrian Army, because they are decentralized, because they are fragmented, and for now they are
and
maybe
working as groups.
Yes.
Okay, but Kevork here, what actually motivates these armed groups specifically that you're speaking about in order to like take advantage of these children? And we've seen some scary images, to say the truth, about how these children are taken advantage of, brainwashed, and even going into various and witnessing various kind of tragedies, of course, as children. What actually motivates them? Is it because of poverty or various reasons?
These kids are manipulated by the fighters of the Free Syrian Army. They told them that they are fighting for the sake of their religion, which is a very controversial issue. They are telling them that we are fighting kuffars, what they call them, and this is a religious obligation for them to participate. If they didn't participate, then there's a punishment for them. But also in some cases, we have to know that some kids, for example, they lost their parents or they lost their mothers and relatives.
Revenge.
That's why they go as a revenge. But here it's the responsibility of the leadership of the brigade that they are fighting in, because they are people who are funding them, and those people who are managing them from the outside, and the whole world is watching these kids. And now, in the past few weeks, we saw mainly 3 reports issued by human rights organizations, and all of them are watching the Free Syrian Army, because they are recruiting a lot of kids under the age of 15 and under the age of 18, and no one is punishing them, because for me, these human rights organizations or the multinational corporations and the media outlets are working as a war machine against the Syrian state. When you have a kid recruited by the Syrian army, you will see the whole media outlets are shedding light on this. But when you have a kid going to war against the Free Syrian, against the Syrian army, they will say that yes, he lost his mother, he lost his father, and he's going for revenge. So they are basically not shedding enough light on this, and they are trying to give excuses for these kids to participate, because in any way we have, even if we don't have any laws, because here we have international, but even if we don't have these laws, we have something called humanitarian values, and when these people are not committed with these humanitarian values, they are pushing these kids for death, and then they are trading with the blood of these kids, because when these kids are died during the course of the war, they will record their bodies, their dead bodies, and say that the regime is killing unarmed kids.
Mr. Wadih, you would like to comment on a point that Kevork highlighted?
I will not comment on the media role, but on the human rights activist role and human rights NGOs. I think Human Rights Watch was the first NGOs to highlight the issue of violation by both parts. And even I think there was the first one in July or August last year to start highlighting some of the violation done by the Free Syrian Army. As human rights activists, our role is to highlight violation. We are talking about violation regardless who is committing this violation. So this was the first. I mean, we are not a part of a war machine from one side or from the other side. Our role is to document violation, what's happened, and a lot of our friends are doing this on the side. On the other side, if we can go to the report of the United Nations Inquiry Commission, the Amnesty International report also, a few months ago, we are talking here about use of child. Regardless, I agree with Mr. Kevork that regardless if they are volunteer or not, the job, the role of the authorities, opposition, regime, whatever, is to ensure to protect those guys. Even if they want to fight, they have to prevent them from fighting.
Yes.
We get some, you were asking me about some information. We know that in the report of NGOs working in Syria on the field, that we have this problem not only with the Free Syrian Army. This problem has happened with all non-official bodies.
Exactly.
Because
and
also some of the pro-regime militia,
yes,
they are hiring, and maybe on voluntary basis. We cannot say today that it's on voluntary and involuntary. And last point, I think when we talk about the ICC, the main problem for Syria and for what happened in Syria with the ICC is that Syria, neither any other country in the Arab region, doesn't ratify the ICC status.
Yes.
So Syria is not part of the ICC. To move any case from Syria, happening in Syria, to the ICC, we need the Council of Security approval.
Okay, and it's documented that Syria did not ratify the ICC, so therefore it's not part of.
They are not part of the ICC. Okay. Lebanon is not part. Israel is not part. All the.
Okay, we will be speaking more about this topic. Okay. Dear viewers, we will take a first break and be right back.
Pollution and climate change, medicine manipulation, genetically modified food, the destruction of wildlife, and corporate exploitation. These are all part of a new terrorism threatening our future.
Eco-terrorism, global awakening to a world under threat.
Dear viewers, welcome back. International organizations which aim is to eliminate the use of children as soldiers have widely adopted a definition proposed in the Cape Town Principles. These define a child soldier in broader terms as any person less than 18 years of age who is part of any kind of regular or irregular armed force or armed group in any capacity, including but not limited to cooks, porters, messengers, and anyone accompanying such groups other than family members. Includes girls recruited for sexual purposes and for forced marriages. It does not therefore only refer to a child who is carrying or has carried arms. The International Criminal Court says that conspirating or eliciting children and using them to participate in hostilities is a war crime in both international and non-international armed conflicts. It is estimated that 250,000 children are fighting in wars all over the world, recruited by force or lured by the false promise of an escape from poverty. They are living a life no child should ever lead. Of course, these are several points highlighted by organizations that are speaking of child recruitment. We will point out some points about that. But before going to that, Mr. Wadih, Kevork highlighted that well, these armed groups tend more to recruit children because there is less tendency that anyone can judge them, because they do not abide by certain laws, unlike governments that, well, they can be followed according to laws that they have been ratifying.
To get back to this point, I think the International Criminal Court, when we talk about it, it doesn't only, how to say it, targeting official. If we go back to what's happening in Africa mainly, the last, I think it was in March last year, or it was not so far, the last person who was convicted by the ICC about child recruitment, he was a war leader. I mean, it's not definitely this. I mean, the ICC will not go into the fact that it's they ratify or they didn't ratify, because the main target of the ICC is that you have it's the countries. I mean, if the Syrian country, if the Syrian government ratifies the ICC will be competent for all crimes committed in Syria or by Syrian people. But that's mean including war crime committed by the opposition of the Free Syrian Army will fall under the competence of the
Okay,
ICC.
let me take this point here for Mr. Kevork Almassian. Mr. Kevork, Mr. Wadih is saying that the Syrian government did not sign the ICC, and therefore it is easy for them to actually recruit these children without even one judging them because they did not ratify the ICC. How would you comment on that?
In other way, you also have the UN Security Council who can send this file to the ICC, and in both ways, I think this is my advice for the Syrian government. They should ask the Security Council for a resolution to send investigators in Syria and to see on the ground who is recruiting child, because 3 reports have been issued in the last few weeks by Amnesty International, the UN's Human Rights Council, and a British organization called Save the Children. And in these 3 reports, they found evidence that the Free Syrian Army was recruiting child, but they noted that maybe the Syrian Army was recruiting, because they always try to be a balance in their report, so they have to criticize both sides. But if they found an evidence, they would mention that in the reports that they found evidence, because now we have the social media is full of videos. You can type the child recruitment in Syria and you will find that all the videos are from the Free Syrian Army side. So for the ICC to move, we have to make them move against the Free Syrian Army, not the Syrian Army itself, because in the Syrian Army you have an obligatory military service, and all the Syrian youth are serving the Syrian Army after the age of 18.
Okay. Dear viewers, of course, now we will take a phone with Dr. Taghreed. Haidar, Dr. Taghreed, you're joining us here. Hello and welcome to Cases.
Hello, thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Taghreed, of course, from your perspective as a psychologist, I would like to ask about the psychological condition of these children who have been recruited in these wars. First of all, why do these children accept in the first place to be able to be involved with these prolonged wars? Is it because of this kind of eagerness from the child to hold a gun and be part of battles?
In general, from a psychological point of view, we don't say that those children accept to go into the war.
Yes.
Because from a psychological point of view, children have no, or let's say limited access to information concerning the consequences of their choice.
Yes.
And they don't fully comprehend the forces they are dealing with. And in some cases, they might be told that they have to stand up against an enemy and they will obey. So they could believe they have to take the place of a family member who was killed, for example, in the combat or in the war.
Okay, but what are the psychological difficulties that these minors actually feel here?
Of course, when we talk about the effects or the impact of those conditions, we say that it's not only a crime against the child, because it's also against society.
Yes.
And many children report psychosocial disturbances such as nightmares, aggression, sadness, depression, even after returning home from war. Mm-hmm. So it's not easy. It becomes easier for them to commit crimes in their own countries, and they become traumatized. And from a psychological point of view, we talk about, especially about the post-traumatic stress disorder, which is an anxiety disorder, extremely stressful,
yes,
characterized by intense fear and horror. In general, the experience of the war finished, but all the child is still living all the details and the negative impact of the war.
Dr. Taghreed, actually we've heard a lot of organizations how they're actually working hard on helping these children to reintegrate into the society. Here, how can these children be psychologically recovered, to be able or sent to rehabilitation centers? Because the first step in dealing with these children is actually to take them out of the conflict that they are in, and the hardest part comes when dealing with them from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, first of all, those children need the support of the society, and they don't need to be blamed.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we hear some people accusing those children for committing some crimes, even though if they are old enough to be charged with the criminal responsibilities, they have to be supported. And new strategies and new rules have to be settled to protect those children, so that they have to be allowed to go to school again, to have the health care also opportunities, so they could, because Farah, there is a problem here. A new culture is in the child's mind now, defined as the respect is gained through the use of a gun, and this culture must be changed when we support those children. Government and organizations and society support must be involved in the conflict, because I think that it's not only an issue for human rights specialists. It has to be on the agendas of all those involved in conflict prevention and resolution and peace building and in the country development.
Okay. Taghreed, Haidar, a clinical psychologist, thank you very much for participating in our program. Mr. Wadih, actually the optional protocol on the involvement of children in armed conflict obligates states to take all feasible measures to prevent such recruitment and use including the adoption of legal measures necessary to prohibit, criminalize such practices. What is meant here of legal measures? What kind of legal measures can be taken against these governments that are heading towards child recruitment?
Against the government, it's a little bit complicated, because international human rights, it's binding for the government, but you don't have a court to submit. The maximum that the government can get from the international human rights body will be warning, and then the case is transferred to the ICC. To get back to the ICC, I think we cannot regarding the issue in a regular way. When a country is in a normal situation, he is hiring people from 15 to 18, young people. Here the international community can act. When you are in a situation like in Syria, an internal conflict, armed conflict, I think the ICC or asking, the main problem is in Syria was human rights violation, gross violation. We have a lot of human rights violation in Syria today. Child recruitment is one of them. There are a lot of other.
How would these organizations deal with the opposition groups that do not follow any legal or any law in actually conducting any kind of measure on the ground?
Which organization are you talking about?
We're talking about the Human Rights Watch, about the International Criminal Court.
About human rights organization, Watch and others. What we are dealing with, what we are denouncing is human rights violation. We have the human rights framework or bodies, and when we have a violation, we denounce it, and regardless who is committing this violation. I think the report of Watch, or the press release of Watch regarding the they do press release regarding the violation. The first one was regarding the global violation of human rights done by the Free Syrian Army. And then there was the first doing this press release on child recruitment. This explains that they are working on the field, and when they notice a violation, they didn't take any political position, and they denounce it. And I don't think that, unfortunately, our job is still in the documentation and denunciation. We don't have any court as human rights activists. We cannot judge. We cannot give a judgment.
So what can be done is send documentaries and reports and
documenting the cases, pushing, doing lobbying. This is what we are doing. When we issue a press release, is to inform the public and to inform the authorities.
Okay, but here, Mr. Wadih, when these are human rights organizations are being informed, or when the international community is being informed, what kind of movement have been done here? A movement that you have witnessed personally, let me say.
As I told you, I witnessed this movement on all violations. When violations are committed by the Syrian authorities or Syrian regime, or by the Free Syrian Army, or by other groups, because we are talking about the Free Syrian Army, but you have Jabhat al-Nusra, you have other military group, and from the other side you have the pro-militia groups, the pro-regime militia, who are auto-defense group, and this, we are watching this not only in Syria, in all countries, when you have this kind of our job as NGOs, as human rights activists, is when we have a violation, we denounce it, we document it, we report it to. Unfortunately, the ICC cannot act on this case, but they can also collect information. The information that get the international, the United Nations Inquiry Commission doesn't come from nowhere. It's come from human rights activists because they didn't go to Syria to investigate. They didn't get the right to visit Syria to investigate. Here also it's another request that we can do to the Syrian government. That means gives the right to the international inquiry commission, gives the right to the human rights activists to go and investigate. The more we investigate, the more we'll be denouncing crimes.
And the clearer the message would be in sending it to the ICC.
And the clear message would be to say, the Syrian government should say, all Syria, they are trouble in Syria. So now we cannot say other things. They are a huge human rights violation. As NGOs, we denounce what we found, but it means it's the job of the ICC to investigate on all violations that happen in Syria.
Dear viewers, we will take a final break and be right back. Stay tuned.
The crisis of capitalism, the European impasse, the energy shortages, the emerging power of Asia, the economic power of the Arab world, the economic debate, informative, revealing, and progressive. It discusses the economic event of the world.
Economic debate, where the numbers reveal the truth.
Dear viewers, welcome back. Mr. Kevork, I was asking, Mr. Wadih actually highlighted that their job as NGOs is actually to submit reports, documentaries, and even articles stating facts about what's happening on the ground. And he said that the more activists that goes, the more information that they would grab. So therefore, these reports have been sent to the ICC and to several organizations that is meant to actually deal with the issue from a law perspective. In your opinion, when the case is set in the ICC, is there some kind of movement that you can recall that have been taken place by these organizations?
First of all, I totally respect the human rights organizations and their job because they are lobbying a lot against the violations which are committed by governments. But the problem in their report is that as an observer for the Syrian case, I read all the reports issued by them. And what I can see is that their language, there's a difference in the language. When it is about a government or the Syrian government, there are hidden calls for intervention, some sort of humanitarian intervention to stop the bloodshed. But when it is on the anti-government side, they always try to say that there is an excuses for that. This is one. The second thing for the ICC. I'm looking for the issue as a political analyst, and I'm looking from a different angle. The ICC is totally politicized because if we took the case of...
So no serious decisions have been made on the ground, you're saying, since they are receiving necessary information from the NGOs?
They are receiving a lot of information. They have their monitors on the ground, even if they are in the country in an illegal way, because if you want to work in any government, you have to take the permission, because the Syrian government also permitted a lot of monitors to enter into the country, like the Red Cross and the Arab League monitors entered there, and they issued their reports. And for the issue of the ICC, I just want to clarify something that, for example, in the case of Hassan al-Bashir, they asked Hassan al-Bashir to capture Hassan al-Bashir, the president of Sudan, because at that time, for committing war crimes, because at that time he was not obliged with the orders of the Western governments. But when the North Sudan and South Sudan was divided, now no one is asking Hassan al-Bashir to capture Hassan al-Bashir. This is the problem, because at times when you are in wars and when there are problems and when someone is committing a violation, and when the United States and other governments are sending their orders to capture Hassan al-Bashir, or let's say President Bashar al-Assad in the future, because they want that. But if someone committed a crime, a huge crime, and war crime against humanity, from side who is an ally with them, they won't issue any warrant against this party. For example, in Bahrain now, there are a lot of war crimes happening as in the same way in Syria, but these organizations are not calling ICC to intervene in Syria, or neither from international states.
Okay, now we're joined by Akil Hanano, who is a political activist, joining us from the USA. Hello and welcome to Cases.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Akil, the Center for Documentation of Violations in Syria, an opposition monitoring group, has documented the death of at least 17 children who fought with the FSA. Many others have been severely also wounded and some permanently disabled. Is there more tendency to recruit children in armed conflict by such groups because there isn't certain regulations they are following in dealing with this humanitarian issue specifically?
Well, to be honest with you, in a lawless land, there is no way you could enforce any rules, being domestic rules or international rules.
Yes.
The only thing is it's going to be a civil activist who could take care of those issues by documenting them and then take care of them legally after the end of the conflict. In the midst of the war, everybody is casualty. The most important casualty for the future of the country are those kids. But how do you implement it in the war? It's impossible, in my view, to be able to implement any rules. The only thing we could do is just make sure those act is documented and then presented to the international legal court or international body to pursue it to prevent future wars from exploding those kids.
Mr. Akil, do you think that these countries who are financing the opposition group inside Syria are turning a blind eye towards the child recruitment that is conducted by the Free Syrian Army?
Oh, absolutely, 100%, because it's all over the news. I mean, in Homs, for example, on the YouTube, there was very famous tape showing kids of 12 years old ordered by Jabhat al-Nusra or whoever those reports are claiming to be. He was ordered to cut the neck of one of those shabiha, as they call it. So this is something not news to anybody. It become a common knowledge for everybody, but the problem is how do we prevent it? And if we are going to depend on the people financing the war to stop it, we will be kidding ourselves. This is a civil activist issue only.
Okay, Mr. Wadih, the countries that are actually financing and supporting these opposition groups inside Syria, is there any legal judgment that will actually follow them because they are sending these money that is being used in humanitarian issues, that we say?
It's a little bit complicated because till now, I mean, till the last few months, you had even till now. I mean, when a country is financing the Syrian opposition, they explain that it's giving this for non-lethal defense or for non-military purposes. So, I mean, in a legal way, they are covering or they are using all the.
So there is no legal judgment.
There are no legal judgments that we
can
can have for this. The second point, I mean, when we are talking about to get back to what Mr. Kevork was saying about the ICC. I mean, it wasn't me. I mean, as human rights activists, we believe that the ICC, I mean, it still needs a lot of work. I mean, independence of the justice doesn't come from scratch. It takes time. The ICC, it's one of the most independent bodies we have today in the international level. It wasn't me who was talking about bringing this case to the ICC, it was him. I mean, either we trust the ICC for all the cases or we cannot trust them.
Yes,
to get back to the Al-Bashir, we have to keep the difference. But to get back to the Al-Bashir issue, the ICC is still prosecuting Al-Bashir. What's happened is that the United States and the other country stop, and including Russia, because if the Al-Bashir was transferred, the case of Al-Bashir, because Sudan doesn't ratify the ICC. If the case of Al-Bashir was transferred to the ICC, that means China, Russia, the 5 major countries accepted. So now it's not the fault of the ICC or the international, how to say it, justice or the human rights activists, if for political reason the United States decides that it's not now very useful for them to fight against al-Bashir.
So they vetoed it, let's say.
No, they didn't veto it. No, it's not stopped. The case is still working. But the ICC doesn't have a policy to go and arrest al-Bashir. So, I mean, we have to do a separation between the use of some country of a judiciary decision for political reason and the judiciary process. The judiciary process is ongoing. Maybe 10 years after, al-Bashir will be caught in a country and he will be referred to La Haye and he will be judged. So from our perspective as human rights activists, I agree with our colleague Akil was saying that in a conflict, during the conflict, it's very difficult for us, our position as human rights activists, it's very difficult because we are talking about principle and we have people talking with us saying my mom get killed. We are talking about principle. Principle is to protect everybody. I mean, when we are talking about protecting shield from recruitment and from participating in the conflict, it's not only for today, it's to protect Syria tomorrow. Regardless who will get out winner from this, what's happening in Syria. We, as human rights activists, as a human being, I might have an opinion. As a human rights activist, my concern is that international law should be respected, because it's the only guarantee that the next step in Syria can be built based on a real foundation, real law, not having 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 children who will arrive at 18, 19 or 20 who participate in the war, who are, as we say, psychologically have a psychological problem.
Yes, and of course, Dr. Taghreed highlighted several points that they have been subjected to, psychologically speaking. A question goes for Akil Hanano. Akil, do you think there is kind of lackness when it comes to these organizations that are submitting what's actually taking place on the ground in Syria? Do we have enough information about child recruitment? Is there more information that we do not know, more tragedies about these children, or the tragedies that these children are actually facing that we do not know about?
Well, there is plenty. There is triple the amount what we know.
Yes, we highlighted around 17 children have been killed. Do we actually have records of more than that number?
Oh, absolutely, there's more than that number. I mean, in Aleppo by itself, it's all documented. And there was a program on some British TV, I forgot the channel number, who showed 15 minutes segment about children recruitment in an inhumane way in every field where those rebels are fighting, from assisting in hospital, field hospital, to assisting in a fighting. But I just want to mention one thing. For us to depend on the international committee to do something about our children, we are giving up on them ahead of the time. I mean, I don't understand, why do we have to go to the international community and the ICC when we know for a fact that there is 2 Khana massacre committed by the Israelis in the 2 wars in Lebanon, and nothing has been done about it. And those kids were killed in United Nations building twice.
So it's a disbelief in what these organizations can actually do?
Well, what they need to do, they need to found a foundation in each country. And these foundations explore all the possibility of putting a media list or expose everybody, including the countries who are supporting those people who are recruiting those kids. By exploring those people and putting all this event on the news, this is how you put pressures on the government. But if you go and give those government who are already supporting the recruitment of the kids the evidence to prosecute themselves, we are just giving up on these kids. This is an internal issue. This is a human rights issue. It has to be done from within the country and then put it up for everybody to see.
Okay, Akil Hanano, a political activist, thank you for participating in cases. Mr. Wadih, of course, here we believe and we sense this kind of disbelief in what these international human rights organizations can actually do because of previous situations that haven't been taken in consideration. And to say the truth, several times in our episodes we highlighted that, and the first impression is that, well, these organizations lack sufficiency. They are not dealing with the case the way they should be dealt. From your perspective as a human rights, of course, you are the Secretary General of Human Rights in Lebanon, but how do you view this?
No, I mean, first we have to do a clear separation between international human rights organization like Amnesty Watch or local organization, human rights organizations. I mean, about NGOs. Our name is non-government organization. Unfortunately, as a non-governmental organization, we don't have any executive way. So that means we cannot take about our non-efficiency, because our target is to raise the issues, to target, to point the issues, to document the issue, but we cannot, unfortunately, judge the issue.
Yes.
We cannot.
Of course you can, but have you watched judgment?
Yes, most of the time people do a mix between non-governmental NGOs and international institutions like the ICC, the United Nations Security Council, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. Those groups, I mean, we are not, there are state group, Human Rights Council in Geneva. It's a 55 state or 56. So we cannot be accountable of what the state refused to do. I mean, if I get back to the what's happened, yes, definitely what's happened during the 2006 war, we participate as Lebanese Center for Human Rights with several Lebanese NGOs, with the Lebanese Human Rights Parliamentary Commission. We prepare like 2,000 or 3,000 page report on violations that was victims the Lebanese people, but the problem is that the Lebanese government didn't use it.
Yes,
the Lebanese government. And what's happened in Syria, I have to get back to what's happened in Syria. All the war crimes that are committed in Syria, and they are not from one part or the other part. And to define who is the part who is, the game is not to say who is doing more.
Yes.
I mean, killing one children, either by a bomb or by when he is fighting, it's a crime.
It's totally illegal, of course. Kevork, Almassian, what's the last word that you would like to say? What is expected now when it comes to child recruitment? What kind of legal movements should be done in order to save these children at least?
Actually, I don't expect anything from the international community, as my colleague Hanano said from the United States. What should be done is to create a higher commission for human rights inside Syria, or a ministry for human rights. We should document all the violations perpetrated by all sides, and because this is an internal issue, we have to solve this issue internally, because the international community and the international organizations are politicized. These are states organizations, and they have an interest to target Syria. That's why I'm calling the Syrian government to create a commission, independent commission, to document all the violations occurring in Syria from all sides.
Okay, Kevork Almassian, a political activist, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio. And also we had Mr. Wadih Al-Asmar, Secretary General of Lebanese Center for Human Rights. Thank you also for all the information that you submitted.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, that's all the time that we have, and as always, whenever these are persecuted, these places, we tackle case by case. Thank you for watching.